Have you ever hung out with a salty believer or maybe listened to an amazing podcast and you left just hungry to be more like Jesus? Well, that's what happened to my friend Rhonda after she watched The War Room. And when she got through watching that movie, she said to herself, I want to pray like Clara. Rhonda did something most folks don't do. She acted on that desire. She did something about that hungry. And the next morning, she had to go to the doctor. So when she got in her vehicle, she began to pray. And I love how she prayed out loud. You know, there's all times for all kinds of prayers, but this was one of those times for a powerful prayer. So she began to pray out loud. And she began to declare the Word of God, scriptures over herself. And she began to pray in her prayer language and worship God. And one thing I know because of the statement she made is, even without realizing it, this was just not an empty prayer. She mixed her prayer with faith. Oh my goodness. It's so important that when we pray, we mix it with faith. And this is what she said. I imagine people thought me a bit touched. I was touched, all right. I touched the hem of his garment this morning for sure. I went into my appointment with power, confidence, and all three people I dealt with that day looked at me kind of funny. I figured from being in the throne room for a bit with him, they could see it on me. Oh, don't you just love it when you see Jesus on people? Don't you just love it? I love it whenever I feel like I carried his presence into a situation. There's more to this strategy of hanging out with the right people than just hanging out. There's a man in the Bible, actually he's a king, King Jehoash, and he went to see Elisha. Now, everybody would agree that Elisha was a mighty man of God. He had great miracles. He would have been a powerful person of influence. And so Elisha was dying. He was on his deathbed. And the king went to see him. Now, this was very unusual. The king must have had tremendous respect for this prophet, because when he got there, he cried. And this is what he said, my father, he cried, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. There's one account in the Bible where the king asked Gehazi, the servant, tell me some of the stories. Tell me some of the miracles that God did through this prophet. So he knew some of these stories. And he also must have heard from Gehazi that when Elisha was separated from Elijah, and the fiery chariot and horsemen came, and Elijah was taken into heaven in a whirlwind. This is what indeed Elisha said at that moment. But he cried and he wept over the king because he knew he was going to die. But Elisha, being the mighty man of God he was, even though he was about to die, he said to the king, take this bow. And whenever he took the bow, Elijah took his hands and he put it on that bow. And then he said to him, now go shoot. And they opened the window and he went and he put the arrow on that bow and he pulled back and he shot out that window. And whenever he did, Elisha said, the arrow of the Lord's deliverance and the arrow of deliverance from Syria. For thou shalt smite the Syrians in Aphek till thou hast consumed them. This was a prophetic act. It was a prophetic picture that God was giving the king to encourage his heart. And then Elisha was explaining the picture. He was explaining the prophetic picture and what God was saying to him. Then Elisha gave the king another set of instructions. He said, take these arrows and bang them on the ground. And he was trying to stir up his faith. He was trying to stir up his determination to beat the enemy. And so in obedience, the king took this bunch of arrows, perhaps in a quiver of some kind. He took these arrows and he banged them down on the ground, but he only banged the arrows 3 times. And it made Elisha angry. And Elisha said, "Oh, you should have banged the ground 5 or 6 times. You should have banged more, because now you're just going to win 3 times instead of totally wiping them out." You see, even though he was hanging out with the great, even though he heard the word of the Lord, he didn't get passionate about it. It would seem from his action that there was no spiritual passion. We need godly friends, and we need to listen to good, solid teaching and be influenced and encouraged by these teachings that we hear. But there's more to it than just hearing it. It has to be applied. You see, first of all, that I see what happened in this illustration that my friend Rhonda gave me is that the king did not value the word of the Lord. My friend, when she saw that movie and heard the word and heard that Clara was praying the word of God, she did the same thing. She valued the word of God. Then we need to mix it with faith. We need to take our faith and say, this is what the Bible says. I believe it. I stand on it. I declare it. I see 4 things here that I think are really important. First of all, is the hearing of the word. We can hear it through our friends. We can hear it through television or podcasts. If you're not listening to podcasts regularly, it's a quick, easy way that on the go you can hear the word of God. You can put on YouVersion and just let it play in your house. Put in your headphones and just begin to get your work done with the word of God going on in your ears. And so you need to value the word of God. Give it a place in your life. Your relationship with God will not be strong and healthy if you're neglecting the word of God. Value it. Value what God has to say about your situation. Value the word of God and make it a priority in your life. And then mix it with faith. See, the word of God cannot accomplish what it's sent to accomplish if it's not mixed with faith. So mix the word of God with faith. Act on what you hear. It is not enough for us to just be hearers of the word. We need to be doers of the word too. Father, I thank you for my friend. And I pray in the precious name of Jesus that you would inspire them to be the person you've called them to be. I pray, Father, that they'll hang out with the friends that love you. And Father, I pray that they will hang out in places where they can hear the word of God, that they'll be diligent to hear and read the word of God, to give it a place in their lives. And I pray, God, as they read and hear the word, they'll mix it with faith. And then I pray that you'll give them the courage and the tenacity and the determination to act on what they hear. Thank you, Father, in the precious name of Jesus. Now, friend, if you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Hit the bell so you'll get reminders, so you'll know every single time that our podcast, whichever you're listening on. And if you have not reviewed the podcast, please leave a review. That helps me get it out to more people. My whole reason for doing this is the Word of God is powerful. And I want people to get a hold of God's Word so they can be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Thank you, dear friend. God bless you. I want to give you those keys one more time. Hang out with the Word of God. People and places that will help you hear the Word of God. And then value the Word of God. Realize that it is God speaking to you, and give it first place and authority in your life. And then mix the Word of God with faith. Fourth of all is act on what you hear. Be a doer, not just a hearer of the Word. God bless you.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Oh, I pray that God will bless you and help you fulfill God's purpose for your life. And don't forget, from my view, the best things in life are experiencing God's love and knowing Him in a personal way. God bless you.